We're on.
Yeah, okay.
Go.
Good evening, everybody, YouTube people. So I'm back. I hope you missed me. If you didn't, well, too bad. I'm here anyway, whether you missed me or not, and we'll go from there. Stage fright. No, I'm gonna get a glass of water.
I'll get it for you.
Okay. Hi, I'm back. Fulton Sheen had an angel and I got an angel too. So tonight's topic is going to be about pornography. Sorry I didn't bring any slides with me, but and all my presentation, the whole presentation, is taken from one website. It's actually 3 articles that you'll find on this one. They have many articles, and I picked 3. The website is Fight the New Drug. I see Fight the New Drug on Facebook all the time. I've got a lot of friends who subscribe to Fight the New Drug, so I see their little posts and articles and whatever. So we'll talk about 3 aspects that the Fight the New Drug talks about pornography affecting 3 major areas in life. That pornography affects the brain, it affects the heart, not the physical, biological heart, but our emotions, which is also the brain, I guess, and how it affects the world, the society as a whole. So, the article, first article I want to share in my little taking of 3 articles that were there, is how it affects the brain like a drug. So, you might just think on the surface that, well, how is pornography like a drug? You know, like cocaine. You might think that cocaine and pornography don't have a lot in common, except that you see someone doing cocaine when you're watching pornography, whatever. But you know, cocaine you buy in a back alley or something like that, and pornography is on the internet. You know, can't download cocaine, well, not yet anyway. Cocaine is very expensive. Pornography free. People don't think of Hugh Hefner as a corrupt kind of guy. They see him as a hero. Good people think of him. But, you know, our society thinks of him as pretty. You know, even how old is he? 200, 300 years old now? And, you know, everybody is jealous of him. And the Playboy Mansion is just seen as a, you know, a fun place to be. Like going to Disneyland or something like that. The similarity between the two, the article is saying, is the brain chemistry. How cocaine affects us mentally, psychologically, and how pornography affects us mentally and psychologically is the same. So, my notes tell me, in case you're not a neurosurgeon, somehow they knew, none of you would be neurosurgeons, unless you're watching on YouTube, you are a neurosurgeon. Deep inside your brain, there's something called a reward pathway. You've got one. Animals have them. Cats have them, apparently. Mammals, it's standard in mammals. And we're all mammals here, as far as I know. No fish. No fish. And apparently this reward pathway, it has a job, and its job is to keep us alive by doing exactly what it promises. It rewards you. So it rewards you when you do something that promotes life, such as eating food or achieving something you've worked hard for. And the way it rewards you is by releasing chemicals in your brain, mainly a chemical called dopamine. Like, that dope is mine, dopamine. dopamine. But others like oxytocin. These chemicals are handy, right? They're readily already in our mind, right? And they help us feel pleasure and to bond with other people. They motivate us to come back to important activities that make us happy. But this reward pathway can be hijacked. All right, so our brain rewards us. You eat a good meal, you feel that nice, warm, yummy feeling, right? And so when we do those good things, you know, joggers, they get addicted to that high they feel. I've never had that addiction. Maybe one day, once I'm a recovering jogaholic, I'll give a testimony about how Jesus saved me from that terrible, terrible addiction of jogging. A likely story. So the way substances like cocaine and opioids make users feel high is they trigger that reward pathway. And it releases enormous amounts of dopamine. But it enormous amounts that you don't have to do much to get that, woo, nice buzz. Okay, so cocaine does that. It puts you in that really nice feeling. Okay. Another activity that does the very same thing is pornography. It does that very same dopamine surge in the brain. So it's not just a feeling, but as it goes through the brain, it creates new pathways through the neurons in order that you get some more. There's like a little 3-year-old in your brain who goes, do that again. You know, it liked it so much it wants that again. Right? That's addiction, right? It wants it again and again and again. You know? It's like my goddaughter when she was young. All she wanted to watch was The Grinch Who Stole Christmas. It's July Marie. I want to watch a Grinch. You know, I don't know what it is that made her addicted to it, that maybe triggered that pathway in her head, right? But she had to watch that. I'm still surprised I never memorized it. Like, I didn't learn it all. Well, Dr. Seuss makes up all these funny words, so. But that's what it does. And so the more a drug user hits up, or the more a porn user looks at pornography, the more those pathways get wired into the brain, making it easier and easier for the person to go back to using the drug, independent of whether they want it or not, consciously. Right? It hooks you right away, just like the drug. Over time, the constant overload of chemicals causes other brain changes as well. Just like a junkie will eventually require more and more of a drug to get a buzz or even just to feel normal, porn users can quickly build up a tolerance as their brains adapt to high levels of dopamine that porn releases. So even though the dopamine is still being released into the brain, the user needs more to get more. Right? It's a lot like alcohol too. When you first drink, that very first ever drink gives you much more of a buzz than that same amount of alcohol, let's say 20 years later. You know, but someone who, let's say, uses it quite a lot, eventually you need quite a lot more to get that same effect, because the kind of the target gets elevated, and so it wants more and more because it tolerates more. It becomes a new normal. So first, you know, you might be young and you might look at something, you know, a little risque or a little dirty, whatever, for 10 seconds. And that gets you all, you know, in a dither or whatever. But then it can grow and grow and grow, where some people are addicted for hours and hours and hours and hours into something that they can't now they're in so deep, they have no idea how to get out of it. The reason why it does is because the brain is trying to protect itself from this overload of the dopamine. And so it gets rid of some of its chemical receptors. So in other words, it's not really paying attention. It blocks some of it out. And so then the brain thinks there's less of it, so it wants more, because it gets numb to it. Does that make sense? Did I lose anybody? So for whatever reason, you become like, you get so much of a buzz at the beginning of, let's say, one glass of wine, and then you go to a glass and a half, and that finally gets that, and then you want more and more because your tolerance level goes higher and higher. And so as a result, people addicted to pornography, like any other drug, that's why they call it fight the new drug, have to find more often, and more extreme. It's progressive. It's a progressive disease, like an addiction. Whether it's cigarettes, alcohol, drugs, these things progress. And then once the person has been accustomed to their brain being stimulated in this way, when they try to cut back, they go on withdrawal. I've known people who have been involved in let's say 12-step groups, and let's say they are both in a 12-step group dealing with sex addiction, let's say with pornography, or with alcohol. And alcohol is easier to deal with than a sex addiction. Well, people often think of porn as something that's been around forever. Today's version of pornography is a whole new ball game, it says, a whole new set of rules, right? You go back and, you know, when all of us were young, it's not the same.
Sears catalog, right?
No, that was it. And that wasn't really anything. You still had an imagination. You didn't even, you know, that's true, you know.
Sears and Eaton's.
You know, but that was as much variety as you got, right? Now, it's unlimited, and it's ubiquitous. It's easy, you know, it's on your phone, it's on your computer, it's whatever. It's on TV shows. TV shows, I you know, bought, you know, season 1 of a particular show. I go home and I start watching it, and it's like, ooh, kind of cool, you know, and there's whatever going on, and battles and whatever kind of things, and all of a sudden it's like, oh, they didn't show that on TV in the 70s, you know, like you get nudity like you
7, 8
wouldn't
o'clock in the morning.
believe, the type,
7, 8 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
Prime time.
Yeah, and it's like, that's on TV, it's like, oh my gosh. And the people are dead into it. You're watching movies. I was at a movie, was it last year or the year before, with my godson, who's now 15, and he was 13 at the, yeah, so it must have been 2 years ago. We went to a movie, and there was a scene, I'm like, oh, don't look, either one of us, you know, unacceptable, unacceptable. But because we've tolerated the levels. Okay, this one doctor testifying before the United States Senate said that it is as though we have devised a form of heroin usable in the privacy of one's own home and injected directly to the brain through the eyes. Right? We look at it through our eyes. And they say this, but men versus women, men are much more visually oriented. I don't know how much this affects women, but it affects many, 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 many men. Right? And it's because we're more visual. We look, oh, look at that, you know? And that becomes an enslavement. Second section that I'm going to talk about is how pornography lies to our heart. First of all, pornography lies to our brain. It tells us that this is fun and exciting, and it just becomes another slavery. It becomes a slavery. The same thing like cocaine. Cocaine and heroin, drugs will just enslave you and hook you for life. You know. I know lots and lots of young people, and maybe some not so young people, who think that the idea of decriminalizing marijuana is a wonderful idea, but not being an expert, my gut tells me I'm not crazy about that idea. Not crazy about it. Because it's a doorway into harder things, and I just think, you know, is there an argument to say that marijuana is akin to alcohol, it has similar kinds of levels and whatever? Sure, but I'm still not a fan of opening the door more and more to more ways that people can harm themselves and hurt themselves. Of course, I just want to live in a bubble, so I don't even get harmed myself, you know. So, pornography affects our brain. How does it affect our heart? It affects our relationships. Just a reminder, too, about Fight the New Drug. Fight the New Drug is not a religious website. It's secular. So they're not preachy at all. It's not a Christian or faith-based website whatsoever. It's dealing with it from a non-religious point of view. So you could be a believer, you could not be a believer, and you can still use their material or read their material from that point of view. But it's important to know, of course, that these things are right and wrong based, even without using the Bible, we're using natural law to guide us in this way as well, which is, of course, Catholic theology says that we do that. So the second section, pornography lies to our hearts. This article talks about how back in the 1950s, two researchers, Dr. Nicholas Tinbergen and Dr. D. Magnus, played a trick on butterflies. Okay, so you had your boy butterflies and your girl butterflies. Okay, and they studied the girl butterflies and said, okay, well, what made these girl butterflies really attractive to the boy butterflies? And they said, oh, well, the boy butterflies really liked these certain features on the girl butterflies, whatever was attractive to butterflies, right? Whatever. So they studied the boys, the male ones, and said, oh, they like this and that, this feature versus that feature, whatever. Okay? So then they made cardboard butterflies, right? And they said, okay, those features, we're going to enhance them even more on the butterfly, right? So wing patterns, it's a certain the boys like certain patterns, so we'll make those certain patterns even nicer and fancier. So even though there were real butterflies all around, the real female butterflies all around, beautiful, real female butterflies, but there were these cardboard ones that looked va-va-voom to the male butterflies. That dumb male butterflies went straight to the enhanced cardboard ones. and weren't interested in the live female butterflies. They were tricked. This is what porn does too. In porn, everything from the way people look to why they have sex is no more real than the cardboard butterflies. It's all fake. Fake everything. Fake, fake, fake. And the kids are watching this stuff, thinking that that's what real relationships are all about. Thinking that's only what relationships are all about. And they believe the fantasy instead of reality. And it destroys relationships. The real butterflies are saying, hey, look at us. And they keep going after the cardboard ones. Or in our case, in the human case, we go after the virtual sexual experience rather than the real one, rather than where it's supposed to be. You know? It's kind of indicative of even our whole culture, not just with pornography, but almost with everything. And I think we're almost, all of us can be susceptible to, I'm dealing with the virtual reality rather than real. You know, you go out for coffee with a friend and you're each talking to someone else rather than talk to the person you're with. Talk about becoming dehumanized. Right? We're being less and less human in our interactions and more virtual. And so we can't connect to other people. We have a distorted view of what sexuality is all about. We have a distorted view of what communication is all about. We have a distorted view about what relationships are all about. So pornography, because of plastic surgery, because of Photoshop, because of editing, because of all kinds of, you know, smoke and mirrors and all that stuff. It looks glamorous and exciting and interesting and fascinating. It makes people feel bad about themselves because they don't look like that. And there's also an element of escalation that happens. From TV to everything. What used to be really risque 50 years ago is nothing. Nothing. You know, everything's just escalating, moving up. In pornography, a person will think that, well, all a person is a body parts to be used. It's an objectification of another human being. Their intelligence doesn't matter. Their personality, their job, their whatever, it's just a tool for sex. The other person is just it's just an instrument to be used and abused. And we learn that by watching that. More and more and more, we objectify. We don't see what a real relationship is all about. And they're showing more and more statistically how the young people are less and less able to enter into permanent relationships. And primarily because of pornography. Also, I think because of all of technology is making it difficult for us to interact with each other. The article says that it shouldn't be a big surprise that when teens watch or see sexual media, I guess that's a fancy way to say porn, both boys and girls have a stronger notion of women being sex objects. And that's all they are. The article says that, you know, a 45-minute porn movie or film would take 3 days to make, right? There's lots of takes and retakes and whatever. And the viewer thinks that, well, everything just happens like that. But it doesn't. They don't think about the gross aspects of it. They don't think about the fact that a lot of these actors are addicted to drugs. And they star, or they work in this industry in order to make a lot of money, in order to feed an addiction. It's a perpetual trap. It's a big, huge trap. There's huge amount, even though a lot of porn is free, there's also a lot of sites that are, you know, for profit or whatever. And there's a ginormous amount of money in that industry. It makes people think that you can do anything to another person. Right? They don't understand that certain behaviors are degrading, or they're violent, and they're inappropriate. I think kids will see things and from that learn things that they should never learn. You know. I won't even say what they are.
Well, some of them are victims in the films as well.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Pornography can cause damage, and they use this analogy in this article. Let's say you're out and you've done a 10-mile run, or if you're Canadian, a 13-kilometer jog. You come inside after jogging for your 13 kilometers. No, it's 16 kilometers.
16,
What am
yeah.
I saying? I remember
It
that.
gets longer the more you talk.
Oh, no. 17 on a bad day. Uphill against the wind both ways.
In a blizzard. Snow.
Yeah, so it feels like 17 with the wind chill. So you come inside and there's 2 glasses of water on the table. One's nice water, the other one is salt water. Both look the same. Both are water also. But one will hydrate your body, and the other one will leave you more dehydrated than before. And over time, while regular water will keep you alive, drinking only salt water will kill you faster than if you drank nothing at all, according to this article from Fight the New Drug. Reference number 9, it says, you look that up. It says it's the same with real relationships and pornography. Why? Because pornography is full of ideas and beliefs that are completely opposite of what real relationships and real love are like. Now this is talking about from a secular point of view, how much more even from a Christian or Catholic point of view. We believe that marriage is a sacrament. And marriage is ennobled in Christ to a level of a sacrament that must be treated with your spouse is to be treated with the same respect and reverence that you would treat Jesus himself. And pornography treats people, men, women, as trash. And that sex is just,
Body function?
yeah. And it's more than that. It's from a whole theology of the body, it's participation in the creation of life, right? It's an ennobling thing. It's part of what family is all about. And there's a whole meaning behind all of that when you have a good Christian couple who have a healthy relationship, sexually and everything, that they see sexuality as something part of a sacred relationship between them, rather than a vulgar thing, or as a means to an end, or as a method of gratification that's purely selfish. And we just go our separate ways, and we've got out of it what we wanted, but there's no responsibility, there's no commitment, there's no meaning to it anymore. It's lost its meaning. From this secular site, it says healthy relationships are built on equality, honesty, respect, and love. But that's not so in pornography. Its interactions are based on domination and disrespect, abuse, violence, and detachment. I don't belong to you. You don't belong to me. There's no relationship there. It's all a dream. It's all imaginary. Here they say a real romantic relationship is about being with a person and falling in love with them. It's about emotional connection and trust. And I like this thing here. It's about falling in love with the person, not just a body part. Right? Remember one priest saying, a woman's not a bucket of chicken. It's the breasts and legs and I don't know what wings are, but it's like thighs and breasts and legs and stuff like this, right? It's like, no, we're talking about a human being, someone you're giving your soul to, someone who has a soul, someone who is worthy of respect. And so are you, right? And we're not just body parts, and it's like we're not just animals. But that a real relationship is based on loving and being in love with that person. And it comes from being committed to that person, that sexuality has that safe environment in which to express itself. In pornography, anything goes for any reason, as long as I get what I want out of it. One of my friends, him and his kids were at a relative's house, and his kids were telling them that their cousin, who was at the time only 10, was looking at pornography. And the boy's parents, at least the dad, didn't care. Oh, that's what boys do. Vraiment? Really? They have to do it? And if you're not watching out what they look at, you start at 10 and you're curious about, just seeing a naked woman, let's say, but then you start seeing behaviors, and then you start seeing more and more and more, and by the time you're 15, 20, 25, 30, how far would it have escalated? And how would that affect, you know, when they get married? What would that be like? In the physical sexual encounter, and I would again add to this article within the context of sacramental marriage, it's about sharing an entire relationship. It's not just about love them and leave them, right? But in pornography, it's exactly that. It's about watching other people do something, so sex is something over there. And it's about allowing that to fuel something deeper and deeper. There are studies, well, that the porn does kill relationships, because the more a person gets into pornography, the more they have difficulty in being able to relate to real people. So just as these butterflies, the male butterflies, tried to mate with the cardboard butterflies and weren't interested in the real girl butterflies, so a lot of guys are addicted to the cardboard women they see in pornography and not interested in real relationships in the real world. Probably because you have to talk and stuff, care about the other person,
Divide and meal.
be polite and kind, and treat them like human beings. The third section of my presentation tonight, again taken from Fight the New Drug. I didn't write a single word of this presentation, just so you know.
That's okay.
But hopefully my delivery adds some certain flavor that is unique from me. And I bring in the little Catholic aspects too. How is pornography changing the world? Skeptics of pornography's danger will point out that pornography has been around a long time. Sure. You know, I mean, there always, you know, old-fashioned pornography might have, you know, actually been art, but people had dirty minds, so they'd look at this art and go, ooh, you know, kind of thing. And say, well, she has no clothes on, you know, and say, look at that statue, and you just allowed yourself to have a dirty mind about it, even if the artist didn't think of that. But, you know, they talk about cavemen drew sexual images on their stone walls, and ancient Greeks painted it on their pottery, right? But that's nothing. Nothing compared to the internet. No. You know, that's not even the same. That's not even close. What we have today is a serious, serious difference. And by degree, by kind, and by quantity, it's way, way worse. So what changed? Like most large cultural shifts, nothing happened overnight. But some wheels were already turning back in 1953. That's before me. 10 years before me. When Hugh Hefner published his first copy of Playboy. There was a time around Dr. Alfred Kinsey came up with studies and whatever, and so people saw sexuality in a little more of a modern way, as it were. Hefner capitalized on that new sense of sexuality. But he had to change the image of porn from sleazy to more respectable by putting all these nice articles, eh? We'd know people. Oh, I just would read it for the article. And you know, sometimes there were articles that became well known. You know, presidential candidates would be interviewed by Playboy, right? and people wouldn't read what the candidate would say, et cetera, right? So it became more and more respectable to see those magazines around in people's homes and whatnot, and whatnot, and whatnot. And so it was seen more like yeah. Oh. So he made it out to be more of a gentlemanly thing, right? Then the next step, so pornography in those days was basically a magazine form. You'd have to go to a magazine store with red lights blinking on it and stuff like this, you know, and it was like really taboo and whatnot. So it was, you know, the really real, yeah, no question? And then, of course, when VCRs came into existence, then the videos became more popular, that people would, you know, I was a teenager in the 80s, and, you know, I knew a couple people in the class who, they had movies, you know. I never saw them then, but I knew people who did, right? And you knew that was, they used the VCR. I don't know how they got away with it. You know, the parents not home, I guess, or something like this. But it became, again, a little more invasive because now it was even more in the home. Even more.
Playboy has got worse because around in the 80s, didn't they have to put a plastic bag around it? And
Yeah. They still sneak it, whatever, you had paper
Yeah.
bag over your magazine, now you had to kind of sneak your video into the house or whatever. One of my friends had a huge addiction to pornography. And his dad found his stack. And all he said was, and these were Christians, Protestants, but Christians, you know. All he said was, don't let your mother find out. Not the best advice a dad would give a son, you know. And that affected his first marriage fell apart because of pornography. Hi, if you're watching this.
Didn't mention names.
No, but it damaged, again, partly because of the laissez attitude of his own dad. You know, you have to watch our sons. I don't, because I don't have any, but, you know. Now that there's pornography on the internet, and all you gotta do is a couple clicks,
It stays.
it's exploded. Between 1998 and 2007, so that's not even 10 years. No, wait, 1998. Yeah,
That's 10 years.
okay, 10 years. The number of pornographic websites grew by 1,800%. I'd like that kind of profit, 1,800%, right? According to a 2004 study of internet traffic in May of 2004, porn sites were visited 3 times more often than Google, Yahoo, and MSN search combined. That I believe. But it also hasn't stayed behind the computer screen, they say here in the article. It's now much more available, it's much more affordable, and more anonymous than ever. Right? It is soaked into every aspect of our life. Video games can have pornographic, how do I do the adjective there? You know, there's pornography, nudity. It says snowboards marketed to teens are now plastered with images of porn stars. It says there are even children's toys that become more sexualized. I'm not sure what they mean by that, but I'll believe them. We have a reference.
Barbies.
I'll believe a reference.
Barbies.
No, there was a
They always
issue
were.
just recently with American Girl doll.
That one too?
American
American
Girl
Girl.
doll.
Really?
Oh, just what she wears, her clothes?
No, they came out with an entire underwear line
Oh.
and made it mandatory. They're sewing it into the dolls. And a lot of parents are getting upset about it because whereas before it was kind of gender neutral, now it almost sexualizes it, sewing underwear onto it and forcing the doll to have that image associated with
Kind of a
it.
bra and panties
Yeah,
type thing.
so even, American Girl doll, I think that was
Okay,
just
so
like
that's
a
what they
few
mean.
weeks ago.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh.
I already said this about TV, right? TV shows now, there's much more sexual content.
Even the
And not just
awards.
talk about it, but,
Sorry, even the awards, like different things, like the Academy Awards, the Oscars, music awards. You just look at the way they're dressed and it's like, wow.
Yeah.
Videos,
Mostly.
music videos.
so it says television shows, movies have been impacted too as producers and writers have upped the ante with more and more graphic content to keep the attention of audiences accustomed to porn. They become so used to it that seeing it on TV, like even that, season 1 that I bought of that one particular show that I won't name, actually even there was a couple shows that I bought season 1 of, and it's like, I'm not buying season 2 of that because it's awful. Last month when I was on the plane, I almost had a heart attack. I said, okay, I'll just watch this one show, right? And it was gross. It was very sexual and not in any way discreet. And I'm on a plane, right? So it's like I have to stop watching that right now, If I wasn't on the plane, I might have waited another 10 seconds, but no, not good at all. It's just mind-boggling. In a study conducted in I don't know what, this is an old article, I guess, in 2004 and 5, 70% of the 20 TV shows most often watched by teens included sexual content and nearly half showed sexual behavior.
So that was 70%
Yeah,
in 2004?
70% of the 20 most often watched TV shows.
I'm sure it's up by
Yeah.
4 now.
So, because we're saturated with this stuff, they have to keep pushing the edge because they want people to watch. And so, once you become dead into something, right, we become desensitized, we want to move farther. And it's interesting because there's a certain balance even that most of us will accept, that we don't have to be prudes, right? And we don't have to dress like it's the 1800s or whatever, or that we have some kind of Victorian sense of modesty. But at the same time, we have to say the line has to stop moving. It has to stop moving, and it's been like just, but you can see as we think of television from when we were young to now, what you can turn on, and it's like, I don't know if I'm showing my age, but it's like, they didn't talk about that on,
Unhappy days.
it's like, yeah, it's like, oh, holy heart attack.
Laverne and Shirley.
The other thing that scares me, that I'm thinking of now in terms of pornography and all that escalating, is how much, even in television shows and movies, popular ones, where sex and violence are put together. Just keep an eye on that. Sex and violence are put together so much. All right? And that's dangerous, to connect sex with violence. because it creates, how does that affect people's relationships? You know, and it becomes an aggressive, angry type of thing. So this is now, the article says, has now become a public health crisis, really, public health problem, because it's infiltrated everything, this idea of pornography. And so, obviously, as Catholics, we need to work on how do we deal with that for ourselves and for those around us, our families, our young people. I think as someone that's involved in ministry, it's like, how do we find ways to offer support for those who are trapped in it? And how do we, like, there's prevention, how do you stop people from getting started? How do you help people who are trapped in it, who want out? And then how do you educate people to make sure that they know that it's harmful, and how do we minister to people in those areas? I don't know if you have any ideas or whatever, because I think a lot of people, if they're struggling with pornography, of course, the shame in telling someone, talking to someone, you know, can a teenager talk to, you know, his parents and say, Mom and Dad, I'm having a problem, you know, or are they going to be like, you know, shot, you know, are they going to be treated badly, or can they really own that and say, how do I get help, you know? What kind of resources are there to help? Because sometimes people don't know what to do or how to get help, you know? Sometimes people know what to do, but they don't want to do it because, of course, they'll lose the drug. And so then they need help with that too, you know? Kind of like with AA, you need your sponsor, right, to call someone and help you get through that, you know? So it's like, what are the boundaries and what are the limits as to, you know, so, and I think part of it too is when someone sees that either they're getting into it or that they could be susceptible to getting into it, or they've gotten into it and they want to get out of it, is to be willing to find the boundaries that are necessary in order to say, I can't put myself in that danger, right? I often tell people, I don't know how many of you remember that actress Mae West from the 1930s, right? And she had a great quote, that she could resist anything but temptation. You know? And I said, and that's most of us, right? We can resist anything but temptation. But how do we avoid temptation? How do we put ourselves in, you know? So families going to look at, where is the computer? Where is it?
In the kitchen.
Okay. Where is it and where should it be?
It's in everybody's hands.
In everybody's hands. Okay? Do I really need data on my phone or not? It's a source of temptation or a potential source of temptation. Not necessary. Right? Do I have the boundaries? Are the computers I have in my home, in my office, or whatever, do I have the proper filters or whatever, screening things that work? You know, there are many that do. Some are free. I like those ones because I'm part Scottish.
And live in Winnipeg.
Hmm?
And live in Winnipeg.
And I live in Winnipeg. Some may cost, but knowing resources of how to help people, you know, how to get them out of that, provide them the support groups, or to provide them the education to say, this is what happens. When you go to websites like Fight the New Drug, you say, look, I'm not even talking to you from from a Catholic point of view, or a Christian point of view, or from a religious point of view. I'm talking to you simply from a human, public health point of view. And just your relationship. You know, whether you're a Baptist or a Buddhist or an atheist, you'll wreck your marriage if you're trapped in pornography, plain and simple. And so it's how do we see that as an issue to be contended with and dealt with? Are there things at the level of government that can help? Are there things at the level, if we're talking about as a faith community here, how do we assist people? You know, how many men in the parish? There probably are women too, but how many people, men or women, who are struggling with this issue, who are embarrassed to talk about it? Now, people might go to confession, but the priest can't connect those people together because they're all confidential encounters with the priest. But how do people help each other connect to each other? You know, we got all kinds of support groups in the church. You know, we get support groups for people that are divorced and people who are widowed and, you know, whatever. But can we provide the type of environments for people to get the help they need and to teach them the resources by using websites like this or other sites that can educate people? That's more my concern. Is like you know, we can preach about how bad it is and how awful it is and moralize, but it's like I'd rather say, look, we got people that are trapped in, if I'm speaking from a Catholic point of view, we got people trapped in sin, people trapped in addiction, people trapped in an enslavement and need to be liberated. And we need to see that as an opportunity to minister to people in those scenarios, in those situations. And as church, we need to fight that. You know, that once in a while someone come and give a testimony and say, I was trapped and I'm free and this is how I got out. Right? You provide material at the back of the church. You know, I don't know, I think some of the Lighthouse CDs might deal with, you know, pornography addiction or whatever, to provide those kinds of resources to people. So I think as churches, one thing to moralize and say, oh, well, this is bad, which is true. But I think we also don't say, well, how do we minister to people so that they are freed from this? That we're missing the boat, you know. That say, how do we take a practical step with this issue of helping those who are dealing with it? Because a lot of people might be fighting it on their own and not know where they can go for help.
So the Canadian government has adopted a motion to adopt a motion that specifically instructs a health committee to examine the public health effects of the ease of access and viewing of online and degrading sexually explicit material on children, women, and men, and they have to have the report done by July. It's starting to move.
Okay,
Yeah, we took a private member's motion.
that's okay.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
Yeah.
It's the first porn study since 1985. Wow.
So we'll take a little break, and I don't know if you have questions or not, but if we do, we'll be back, you two people. If not, see you later.
All right.